views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of alltalkradio.net.
Looking back at life as it's been before, holding on to things that might have been, knowing that this day will never come again.
And welcome to Soul Chat. This is Elena Risto. Jane McGuire's on her way in. The I-15 freeway here in Las Vegas didn't work to her advantage today, so apparently she said it stuck both ways. Did you get caught in that, Carol? Oh, good, smart woman, smart woman. So today what we decided we want to talk about is divine timing. And divine timing being, is there a right time or a wrong time to do anything? And it's my point of view, being a shamanic healer, that there really isn't a wrong time. There's just times that just don't feel so good. They feel better than others, right? So I was watching, PBS has a show called How We Got to Now. And they had a show just on time, which was really interesting. And they were talking about how time is something that was invented, probably, of all things, it was invented as something that we standardized because of trains. Because we had, every state, I didn't know this, but every state had, every city in every state had their own time, and it was based on the sun. When it came up, when it went down, and things that they made relative to time were like, in those days, because we had such a rural population, which was about 150 years ago, they had, everybody said it's as long as it takes me to milk a cow. That was their reference. It took time I'll be there as soon as I get the cow done.
And the weird thing was, is I heard about this, they had to standardize the time because the trains were actually crashing into one another.
That's right. Yeah, they were. And everybody had, in the same state, you could have like 37, each city had their own time. And so you could have 37 different times in the state. And the problem was, if you were going from the East Coast to the West Coast, now people could travel faster than they could ride a horse. So it moved with them, So what happened is that they decided they needed to standardize it. And they went from, I can't remember, there were like 50 different trains a day going across the country. And this, of course, was in the late 1800s. So they got it down to 4 time zones, and a year later, the world they started, what do they call it, GMT, Grand Meridian Time. So that's how that all happened. But if you think about it, when we were milking cows, and I don't know how many of you milk cows out there, I did. My grandmother had cows, and I milked those silly cows right along with her, right? If you think about it, we moved with the sun. We got up, we were really more in tune with our body clocks than we were a timepiece that was sitting on the mantle. Okay, so I was looking at this and I was thinking about it, and I know as I have gotten older that I seem to run better if I can sleep until I naturally wake up. It's just so jarring. Everybody here in the room is going, yeah, that's right. And I used to get up for years. I used to get up for years at 6 o'clock in the morning and make sure the kids got off to school and all of that. And I'm really glad I don't have to do that right now, because I'm not good. I am not good. And the issue about divine time is that in the work that I do and the work that Jane does and a lot of alternative healers, that time doesn't exist in the other reality. That's not what's important to spirit. That's not what's important to the growth and the changes. What's really important on that side are the changes in perspective that are made. And they don't care if it takes lifetimes. They don't care if it takes a nanosecond. They don't care. What's important to them is that growth for the spirit is happening. So that can't be put on a clock. Some people take lifetimes to learn the same things. I just have a I just have a thing I bought. I couldn't, when you in the store and you realize you see something and you just have to take it home. It's a little plaque about this big, and it says, "Dear Karma, I have a list of people I think you missed," right? And here she comes. So Jane's sliding in here. How was the 15?
It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Let's talk about divine timing.
Yeah. Actually, that's what we were talking about, and I was just catching them up. I watched a show called How We Got to Now, and it was all about time, when it was instituted 150 years ago. We moved with the sun, and what really changed us was timing trains. It was the trains.
The trains, so we can blame them.
Yeah, we can blame them. I don't know if it's a blame, though, because if you started out in Boston and you started out at noontime there, and in New York it was 12:20, and someplace else it was 11:20, and someplace you had to know when you had to know when you had to get to the station, and when you got off.
That makes sense. And of course, California, we had a lot of the immigrants, the Asian immigrants, building the trains. So that makes sense.
I don't know what that. I don't know.
No, I mean it's just as far as the train industry starting the thing with time.
Right. So it actually started with Galileo back in the 1500s, and what he noticed about time is on a pendulum. You know how people use pendulums too? He noticed that it didn't matter what the arc was, how long it took from side to side, whatever the arc was, if you cut it in half, it was equal distance from the bottom where it was straight to this side to this side. It didn't matter if it was wide or if it was long. And that's why the old clocks were pendulum clocks.
Oh, that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. It's a pretty cool show if you
Yeah.
watch it. So we were just talking about divine timing, and that with divine timing, spirit doesn't care.
Right,
Time is a measurement that we use on this side.
Time is human.
And it's human.
It's
It's
human.
very human.
Yeah.
And as time went on, not timing, but as time went on, we got locked into schedules more and more. It wasn't, it takes a long time for a garden to grow, so you couldn't plant a seed and expect to harvest it at night.
Right, and we had an agricultural society at
We
one
did,
point.
for the most part.
So that and actually the Mormons, when they came west, had the perfect setup. They would go as a group and then build a fort, and stay there for 3 months, and then they would plant the crops of the season, and then 3 months later they would leave and go to another fort that was started by a group ahead of them. And by the time they got there, the crops that they had planted would be ready for reaping.
Right.
And so it really does it does go along with that, and we've moved away. The Industrial Revolution, of course, had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, it did, because now all of a sudden you had to have people at certain schedules. I also thought it was interesting as they talked about the one place on the earth that you can go where you can get out of this time thing that we're in of 24 hours and is in a submarine, because you have no reference at all.
But you can come to a casino here in Vegas and there's no clocks in the casino.
I lose time in a casino.
Right.
I do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you never know. I've been, before I lived here, I would come here and you'd walk into a casino, it'd be noon. You have no track of time. You walk out and it's dark.
Yeah, I've done that.
And you can easily be in there for 9 hours.
I've done that. I've done that in my house. If I put my head down and I'm
Right.
busy doing
Right.
something.
I've done that when I've gone to take a nap and
Right.
woken up thinking I've slept 12 hours and it's 7 o'clock and I'm thinking it's 7 o'clock in the morning and it's 7 o'clock at night.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have gotten to a place where everybody is so focused on, I have only so much time, I have to get someplace. You just went through that.
I think it was absolutely
I
perfect.
think it's perfect. There we
It
go.
was
Divine timing,
absolutely
just like
perfect
that.
I was late today.
Right.
Because I don't like to be late.
Why?
And that's something.
What happens?
Well, I was
Whose voice
raised.
do you hear?
No,
when that
it's I hear my mother's. No, but it was I was raised where it was more of a being polite. If you're going to be somewhere, if you say you're going to be somewhere at 5 or 6 or whatever, you're there, and it's a thing of where you're respecting somebody else's time and schedule, and that's how I was raised.
Yeah. And then there's island time.
Yes.
That's a
yes,
whole different thing.
Yes.
It's however long it takes you to get
Yes.
someplace, which I think is closer to spirit time, if you're going to have
Right.
such a thing.
And then there's legal time, because remember, I worked in the
Oh,
legal
we don't want to
field.
talk about the lawyers.
I worked in the legal field for a while, and there's deadlines, and there's this,
Right.
and there's that. And if you miss a deadline with the court, guess what? The judge doesn't care.
So the part of the show that we started talking at the top of the hour when I was talking about it is that time was based on the sun, and you went to bed when it got dusk because you
Yep.
couldn't see, and of course in incandescent lights changed all of that,
Right.
you know, up until that point.
But
it
we had
was-
fire at that point, fire and candles.
Right, and that
Yeah.
was it. And so we got to that place because we would, you know, we had to get up at a certain time because we knew we had to get the cows milked,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a survival thing.
Mhm.
That was a thing for literally surviving.
And the eggs from the chicken
And all of that,
Right, we had
and
to get
all
we
of
had to
that.
get breakfast.
Right.
Yeah.
Someplace along the line, we switched over to this: got to get there, and I got to get there now.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality I think that messes people up when we talk about spirituality, because it takes what it takes.
And I have people, and you've asked me this too, but I definitely have people in readings ask me about, you know, when is this going to happen? And I can only give an approximate. I've been known to give exact dates when I see exact dates clairvoyantly or I hear it, but it is definitely something that can be changed.
Well, if you think about it, if you're working through an issue,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm working through an issue, it's going to take what it takes.
Yeah.
I may not get it the first time. I mean, I knew when the last relationship that I had, that I could have bypassed a lot of things had I just said no to that relationship. But for whatever reason, there was part of me that wasn't ready to stand up and say, I can't do this now. I
Yeah.
have to focus on myself. I wasn't ready to focus on myself and do what I needed to do for myself. I needed another
needed- you
situation
needed a
where I was
distraction.
needed. I
Yeah.
needed a distraction.
Yeah.
When I got to the end of that relationship, I didn't need it anymore.
Right, and I think
It's
I know I've gone through that. And
Yeah.
I think everybody out there at some point has been in the relationship that was just right for that time, but not right for future time, and that has
Yeah.
to do with lessons. And like you said, being ready, not being ready. My least favorite word, and people that know me well, they know my least favorite word coming from spirit is soon.
Oh, yeah.
Ju-
That's
because-
another one, too. Soon. Soon could mean
Soon.
10 years in this
Yes,
time, and it
yes.
could mean 10 minutes. It
Yeah.
just depends.
Yeah, it really does. And what I found when working with the angels is you have to ask questions in a different manner. So, for example, like what season is it? And again, I get symbols for each season. So I get a symbol for spring, for winter, and fall. So I can say, okay, well, it's going to happen between this date and this date because that's the season.
Now, it's interesting. I'm going to step back into last week's program, which you weren't here. I don't know if you've had a
I
chance
was
to watch.
moving.
Yeah, yeah.
Talk
That took
about-
time.
That took a lot of time.
That took time.
Yeah.
We talked about that Halloween. We always celebrate it on October 31st, but it's
Mhm.
actually tied to something called All Hallows Eve and Samhain,
Right.
which this year is November 7th,
Which is Friday.
which is Friday,
Right.
which is also
A full moon.
moon.
A full moon in Scorpio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's a full
it
moon. Well, the sun is in Scorpio. The full moon is in Taurus.
Oh, so a little bit stubborn stuff going on.
Yeah, well, actually, Taurus is interesting because it's about value. It's about what do you value in your life, because Taurus is very much surrounds themselves with everything they love.
Yeah. Libras
So-
do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so bringing that up, what it was, and Vicki Claire was very interesting, I thought, because she gave some details I didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
which is not unusual. But it really is about when the constellation Scorpio was 15 degrees above the horizon. Now, how they knew that back in Ireland
Right.
and whatever, because they were probably arguing about something.
They were arguing about beer.
Everything,
Beer and,
probably.
beer and
yeah.
potatoes.
Yeah. And so they knew, relatively speaking, where 15 degrees was in the sky. We just
Mhm.
figured out the measurement from that the veil dropped at that time, and it was felt that the spirits, helping spirits from the other side, came through to this side and kind of did a cleanup. They took people who had
Yeah.
passed on during the past year, whose spirit maybe hadn't moved on to the light, helped people that were hanging on by a thread.
Let's back up for a minute.
So there's a time thing now. You could say, well, it'll be on the full moon.
Well, let's back up for a minute and explain to people what the veil is.
Yeah, the veil is our best word for something that separates this reality from the other
Right.
reality, and you can look at it as a theater curtain. You can look at it whatever. Some people see through it
Mhm.
easily.
That's called piercing the veil.
Right,
Right.
right, and so that's what that is. So when the veil drops on Samhain or
Mm-hmm.
whatever is that, then the spirits would happen, and people would stay in because it was felt like from sunset to sunrise was when all of that work was going on.
Was going on.
And they
right.
wore their clothes backwards,
yes.
inside out,
yes.
because they didn't have costumes. Most of them were pretty poor.
Yeah.
They didn't have costumes, so to fool them,
It was to
the-
fool the leprechauns, to fool the spirits.
to
yeah.
fool. But it was an honored thing. So you talk about time. That was the pretty close for that situation from sunrise to sunset.
Mhm.
I mean, sunset to sunrise. That's time frame within about 6, 7, 8,
Well,
9 hours, depending on,
And
on
that's
the
what
time of year.
the Jewish people do. Friday night they have their Sabbath to Saturday. It starts at sunset on Friday and goes till sunset on Saturday.
So the timing situation in that time frame, in that era, had more to do with events that happened in life as
Yeah.
opposed to a mathematical,
Mhm.
precise equation. Now we're on atomic time,
Right.
which the clocks of the late 1800s and the early 1900s were all based on this pendulum, this
Mhm.
swinging arc thing. And now it's on atomic time. And they actually have what they call, I just heard this before I came, they have a leap second because it's so finite and it's down to the point that
Mhm.
literally, because of the airplanes in the air, their telemetry could go down. Computers could go down if that leap second
So is
isn't in there.
that has to do with leap year?
I don't know. I have no
Yeah, I
idea.
don't know
Probably
about
just it's just a term that they've
Right.
used for that.
Yeah.
But look at how finite we've gotten with it, and as the years go by, we've gotten tighter and tighter with I've got to be here by then, I've got to be
Mhm.
here by that. We've got to, you know,
Yeah, we've gotten out of balance.
we've gotten out of balance,
Yeah.
and we're not listening to our body clocks anymore.
That's,
Based,
yeah,
connected with nature, of course, which that's my big thing.
right. And you can see that with a lot of people that we talk with that are having sleep problems.
Oh yeah,
You
there's
know,
a whole
there's-
light industry now
Yeah.
about certain light that needs
Yeah.
to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we're not going to go into other reasons for sleep issues, but my own daughter, for example, sleeps during the day because that's her circadian rhythm.
Mhm.
She sleeps during the day and is awake at night. And she's
So she'd be a great graveyard person.
She would be awesome. Well, that's why she goes to night school.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but she's been this way since she was about 4. And it's always she's just always been this way. So now that she's an adult, and of course this is the perfect town for that because this is a 24-hour town.
The town that never sleeps.
Right.
Yep.
So
Like
this
Chicago.
right or
And
New
New
York, right? San Francisco.
Where there's light.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And they're 3 hours ahead.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's definitely got to do with, like you said, the shifting body rhythms, the shifting rhythms of the earth. I think it has a lot to do with weather patterns. I think it has a lot to do with all these changes that are coming into earth, not just man saying, you know, this time we're going to have Pacific Daylight Time
Right.
and 6 months from now we're going to have Pacific
Actually, I
Standard
forgot
Time.
to turn my clocks back.
I have the clock on my car that's still ahead an hour. So, but the other ones are all electronic.
And I was so excited when I figured out I had another hour. I couldn't believe how excited I was.
What
'Cause
hour
I thought
was
I'd
that?
gotten late. I thought
Yeah.
I'd gotten up late. And I thought
Yeah.
I'd gotten up, like I'd been up really late, and so I had slept in. I thought I'd slept until 11 when I figured out it was only 10.
Mm-hmm.
But
right.
again, it's a perception.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, look how my reactions were to a perception.
Yeah. But that's what our life is. Our life
Yeah.
is a reaction to perception.
And there are no hard, fast perceptions.
Right.
You can agree on certain things, like I can look at that and say, oh, that's a mic, and you can look at that and go, oh, yeah, that is a mic. But somebody might look at that and say, no, that looks like an elephant neck
Or it looks
with
like a Doug. Yeah.
whatever.
I have a cute story about time. Years ago, I don't think you met her. I used to rent space from Cattell, the Vegas
No,
astrologer.
I've heard about her. You
Right,
mentioned her a lot.
She had a show here on All Talk, and I'm not sure if George still plays her shows. If he does, it's usually on Fridays. But check it out if you guys get a chance. And so I was renting space, and she died about 4 years ago in March. And of course, she was also a psychic, and there were a lot of people in the community that came together. And one person channeled it through that where Cattell was now was on the other side, obviously, teaching about astrology to her students on the other side. And she looked at them and said, "I'll be back. Just give me a minute." And that was when she incarnated and came back. And then she was here for 58 years. Boom. So 58 years to us means a long time. But on the other side, 58 years
means nothing.
is a flash.
Now, Vicki was talking about she sees time, and I tend to see it this way as well, as a spiral, that life is a spiral, that you have certain points that you come around and you kind of get flavors of something that's lined up with the same way. That's where the lessons occur. There's Kairos time and there's Chronos time, and we're on Chronos time.
And that's named after an ancient Greek god, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Back to divine timing. Everybody says, now that we've had this little thing about actual time and how we've gotten hooked on it, and I got to be here by 6, and I've gotten to the place that I have to leave the house at no matter how long it's going to take me to get there, or how far away it is, I have to leave at least a half hour before.
If you're just planning on traffic.
Just
and
planning on
unplan-
traffic
yeah.
and whatever. But imagine the distances when we lived like the week we were talking, Vicki and I were talking about towns 3 miles apart would have different dialects. They wouldn't even be able to understand each other
And
because 3 miles was a long way.
and the monks that settled California, where they came up and they started the not monasteries, but they started the missions. They came up from Mexico. The missions were exactly a day's horse ride apart in California.
So there's your timing. Now look at everything that could happen as time has gotten shorter or smaller or tighter, or however you want to talk about it. Look at what can happen as the time gets smaller for learning. So maybe it's not a bad thing to not have a time frame. Maybe it's not a bad thing to do that because you can focus on what's going on.
Right, and you can
Internally.
surrender and say, okay, I see that this is in your timing, in divine timing. Because if we try to control something too much, Spirit's just going to laugh at us and say, oh, really?
Yeah, I've heard that laughter a few times. I've heard that a lot, actually, in the past, and not as much lately. But I was telling you talk about divine timing, that I had a friend whose cat died, and I called her up to wish her happy birthday this week. And I managed to call 30 seconds after her cat died in her lap. And I remembered feeling, she called me up a couple days later. She felt bad because she felt like she was rude to me. I felt bad because I felt like I'd intruded, and yet neither one of us, that didn't really even enter into the whole interaction at all. It wasn't. And then what I remembered is after I hung up the phone and I kind of connected with Spirit, and I thought, gosh, you guys give me so much information. Could you have given me a clue? Wait an hour, wait a half an hour. Of course, they don't know what that means anyway. Right. Just wait. No, all I heard was it was important. And then when I talked to her later, she said, actually, it was important because I was by myself. It broke the mood. It broke it, so I quit wailing and sobbing. And she'd had this cat for a long time, and you know how cats. Our pets are.
I have a cat.
Well, our pets, they're like our kids.
Absolutely.
They're a member of the family.
Yeah.
So she really actually said that really helped her because it took her an hour and a half or 2 hours for her husband to get home from wherever he was. So it helped.
It does.
So there's divine timing, and they gave me the perfect example of that by just saying it's important.
Yeah.
They don't care what time it is. They don't, to them, if you ask them, and you've gotten this, if somebody asks you, am I going to be happy in this relationship? Is this a good time for me to do it? And they're going to say
yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because to them, either way, you're going to learn. You're either going to learn because from the mistakes you make, or you're going to learn from the happiness that you got from it. So either way, they don't care.
Right.
So specificity, there's a good word.
Well, it's definitely about the right wording.
It is.
When speaking with that.
Right.
But it's also about if you, and this is kind of going back to the original name of our show, Synchronicity in Your Life. If you remember 9/11, the numerologists went nuts on that because, of course, 911 means emergency, right? And they were going on about how that particular date was chosen for the Twin Towers to go down.
And it's interesting, too, because if you do the numerology on that, it still comes out to 11. If you go 9/11, it's 9 and 2. And 11 is a sign of the angels, right?
It is.
So it's all about perspective on what's happening at the time.
But again, at the time, it was 911.
Yeah.
It was 911, meaning all these emergency responders were going to come out. It's a lot about that. I mean, things definitely have to happen in a sequence.
Sometimes. I think they do, but I don't even know if there's a sequence, because is that a man-made thing as well, sequence?
I think if you look at our life and the way we've progressed, I don't mean just you and me, but humanity in general, we start off as babies. We have to start somewhere. And then we go through that process, and then, at age 16, we learn to drive. At 18, we graduate high school, and then we make other decisions. I think there are things that have to be sequential.
I don't know.
We cannot eat meat without teeth. We learn how to swallow it. We learn how to manage that.
Yeah, but
food.
I don't know if that. I don't know. Maybe we're not talking about the same thing, because emotionally, I think we're closer to spirit when we're floating in water before we're born.
Yeah, because we're coming from divine love.
Right, and so it's a process of we're relearning who we really are. I mean, kids are so much closer. They're so much easier to teach them to journey. They're easier to grasp what we're talking about.
Right, and I taught kids for 25 years. They
so in this reality, I think sequential things are important. But again, there we go. It's this reality and that reality. And how do we make the two of those come together? And maybe that's where the discussion is.
And I think, and by the way, we should probably give out the number if any of you have any stories about divine timing in your life. Please feel
Right.
free to call us at 702-609-7626, or you can use Skype and type in the search bar All Talk Radio and talk to us that way. I want to take 1 minute of time, and I want to send out some healing energy to our sponsor, to Cheyenne Foster.
And she's still
She's
healing?
she's still in the hospital. She's back in. She was taken off the ventilator and underwent another surgery on Friday. So, we want to wish her well.
Right.
But she is a sponsor of the show, so that's Synergy Holistic Health. And she probably, if you email her, she probably will not get back to you right away because
No.
she's got some health issues of her own to be concerned about right now. So we're just sending out some positive energy to Miss Cheyenne Foster.
Right. Right.
So, but divine timing is definitely, it's kind of where you can look at, say, okay, Spirit's going to pull this puppet string, or it's going to pull, and maybe those aren't the right words.
You know, I don't know if it's puppet string. I just kind of think that that Spirit is there to guide us and to support us in what we want. And from my belief system is when we come into this life, we ask to learn certain things.
Yes.
So in that light, I mean, we can take as much time as we want. We can take this lifetime, we can take the next lifetime, we can.
Right.
But then that's my belief system.
And you want to talk about time, you can go on YouTube and type in the word time, and you're going to come up with a gazillion songs. Time in a bottle, you turn back time, to
Right.
everything there is a season, there's just 1,001 songs describing something that is really intangible.
Right. And there's many lines that you hear about it when it's time. You know, is there a right time or a wrong time? I'm not sure that there is.
Well, I think running a red light is a wrong time, especially in
Well,
front of a
based
cop.
on sequential things in this, but
Right.
but is it a wrong time? Running a red light, are you going to learn from it? That's the question. Are you going to learn from it, or are you not going to learn from it?
Yeah. Yeah. And there are some people that will not, they will stay stuck in a time period in their life, especially if there's been trauma or something. And you've got some friends that have kind of gone through this, and as do I. People that have had some trauma in their life and they do what they can.
Or they have a time in their life they will not let go of because
Yeah.
that was the best time in their life.
Yes, yes.
That can keep you as stuck as well. It doesn't have to be
Exactly.
trauma. It can be
Yeah.
it can be either way.
Yeah.
And then again, divine timing. So what is that?
I think divine timing is when we are in partnership with Spirit and ready for the next step. We've got to let go of, again, what no longer works for us, figure out what does work for us. And then the things that we're trying to manifest are going to happen. This is happening in your own life. You've let go of stuff that you've done for years, doing the county fairs, and you've got a show
Right.
coming up.
Right. And the way that came together is really amazing. But I also think I was in a discussion with a friend of mine today that's in town, and there's also that thing about living in the moment. She asked me a very interesting question. She said, do you ever get concerned that there's something terrible is going to happen and we're going to lose it all and the whole thing's going to be gone? I mean, obviously she's referring to the Middle East and what's going on in that direction.
I have just a different perspective on that.
And I had to look at it for a minute and go, no, I honestly don't think about that. Because if I think
Yeah.
about that, it takes me out of the moment. I
Right.
need to be in the moment as much as I can.
Right. And for me, my life in the last 2 weeks has been one big transition moment.
Yeah.
It's just been, with Well of the Moon closing, me moving out of the house into an apartment and doing all this other stuff. It's just been not even one, 1,000 different transitions for me.
Right.
And it's all, and that's been for me very much trying to stay in the moment and not worry about other stuff.
Yeah, I still am back on this sequential thing. I think that's a timing thing for this reality. I don't think it's in divine timing. I think it happens. I think divine timing happens when it's right.
Yeah.
When it's time for it to happen.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that one relationship that I had that lasted a long time. We broke up, we went back together. And I knew at the time when we went back together that it wasn't quite, it was off somehow. And then all of a sudden things came to light a couple of years later that made it impossible to stay in it. I think that had a divine handiwork. It's almost like, okay, you didn't get it that way, let's try it this way. Let's see if you get this. I got it.
I think that happens to all of us.
Yeah.
We stay in the same situation until we can figure out what the lesson is. I think that's human nature. Where a lot of people are afraid of, they've got a fear of the unknown or what's going to happen next. So they stay where they're comfortable, which is where Spirit's trying to say, no, this is no longer serving you.
Yeah.
Get out of what is comfortable.
Well, and you still can stay in it if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah,
a choice.
absolutely.
You can absolutely stay in it. I could have stayed in it even then. But it was, I'm with Tony Robbins on this one. I think in this reality that we tend to move towards pleasure. Less painful, more, or from, we move into less painful from, away from more painful.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's not the best situation, but at least it's less
tolerable.
than what I just went through.
Right.
It's tolerable.
Right.
So the divine timing thing, it's just, it's really kind of amazing how things come together. When I get out of the way and step out and I'm willing to be open to a new perspective. That new perspective, I don't think, I don't know. This is kind of a heady conversation, but it happens around us all the time. It's the original name of the show, was synchronicity, with things that come together in random, what appear to be random things.
Even
that
the
come
way
together.
we got the show this time.
Right.
Right. You know, and the way I got the first synchronicity was after Catel's death, which was what propelled me to want to go on the radio. And no, I definitely think that there are coincidences. Well, and I don't really believe in coincidences.
I think it's the best term that we have for what it is.
Yeah.
I don't believe in too many coincidences either. I think it's just things that happen, and what do we do with them in every single moment? We can either repeat a pattern, which then puts us into this reality, or we can create something new with it.
Yeah, and I think once people realize that they can actually create their reality, their perspective on their own world and the world at large changes. Because then they realize they can take this and say, wow, I just don't need that in my life. I'm gonna go to the right, or I'm gonna go to the left, or I'm gonna do nothing. Yeah. I'm not gonna take it consciously making a choice. I'm not gonna do anything right now. I'm just gonna watch. I'm gonna wait, and I'm gonna see. It really is an interesting point of, is divine timing really truly stepping into free will? I think it is. I think it's stepping into free will and deciding to be that vessel. Yeah. And then it is about stepping out of that and letting the universe make things fall into place. If you look at when a baby is born, this just drives me crazy these days, because they're all taking sonograms, they're all taking pictures, they've got it down to what is it, what time is it going to be here, guilty. What time is it going to be here. I have to say, one of my pet peeves, and I'll probably hear about this, but I really don't like seeing the sonogram pictures on Facebook. Yeah, you know, I'm with you. There are some filters that I know they're proud. I know that they're whatever, but is there no sacred place on that? You know, my oldest daughter is a Valentine baby, and I always thought, and this is where perspective comes in, I always thought that was be just a great day to be born. She and her aunt are exactly 36 years apart in age. Wow. Yeah, because her aunt was also a Valentine baby. So, you know, I'm growing up. My birthday's a summer birthday, which is very different from a birthday during the school year. So I always thought this was really special, that she would get all these birthday cards and Valentine cards growing up. She actually, you know, is finally now, and she's 23 or 24, coming into the fact of, okay, I can actually start to enjoy my birthday now. Because it's always been Valentine's Day. It's kind of like it's always 5 o'clock somewhere. Well, but you know, and growing up, we celebrated Valentine's Day and her birthday. And I can tell you the amount of Valentine birthday cards there's probably 5 or 6, and even that's at a Hallmark store. Wow. So, but to me, it was a special day. I thought it would be great to have a child on that day. Interesting. Well, I just think it's interesting because when somebody says, when is the baby due? When it gets here. Right. I actually had, when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter, I had a heart surgeon who was a stepfather to a dear friend of mine. I was walking through their living room, and he looked at me and he goes, wow, I hope it's a boy or a girl. And I went, okay. I turned and looked, wait a minute, what else would it be? A little medical humor there, I guess. Right. You know? But the truth of the matter is, it's all just in motion from the moment that for some people it's conception, some people it's the first breath, but from the moment we enter this reality, we're on. We are.
We are on,
Yeah.
you know, and the baby will come when the babies do.
Right. Right. And again, it goes to those growth patterns. Remember, I studied psychology in college, and
Right.
kids progress at a natural rate. You know, they roll over, they crawl before they walk. You know, they do all of this stuff. All of that has to be in their time. And I know parents compare all the time. Natalie walked at the tail end of normal. Stephanie walked at normal, but a week after Natalie walked, she started running.
Yeah.
You know,
So
well,
maybe they were just thinking about it for a
Right,
while. So
right.
is that divine timing?
I think so, because actually she wound up being on the track team in high school. So I think the fact that she picked up running so quickly, and whereas my other one was a little more cautious, and yeah, everything was kind of when she decided it was
Right.
going to happen.
So let's take divine timing to the extreme. And I'm thinking about anybody that's lived in the Northwest. You've lived in the
yes, I
Northwest. The
have.
Columbia Gorge, you've driven down the Columbia Gorge, right? And it's a narrow highway. It's got a highway on both sides of the Columbia River. One's a 2-lane and one's a 4-lane.
Yes.
And there was a couple driving several years ago down the 2-lane highway on the Washington side, which tends to get less traffic because you can't go as fast. They were the only car on the road for a while. It's not bumper to bumper at all. And a boulder came down the hill and hit the car, landed right on the car, and killed them both instantly. Is that divine timing?
I think it is.
Where does it come from?
Yeah.
How for that car to be? What's going on there?
Right.
You know, so how many lives were now affected by that particular accident? You know, people that cared about them, things, jobs. You know, there's all of that in there.
Absolutely. That's the ripple effect.
Yeah.
One accident like that has a huge
Right.
ripple.
I also liked Gary Zukav when he explained this one time, who you know I studied with for several years, was talking about people that commit suicide. And he put this way, he says, I don't know whether it's a right or a wrong issue. I'm not speaking to that. What he spoke to is that when you decide to take your life in your own hands out of this picture, okay? Take the morality out of it, everything.
Right.
If there are certain people that are down the path waiting for you to show up, you know, you won't be there to give them the smile at just the right moment that might make you go on if that's what you need. You won't be down the road to help them when they're going through a crisis.
Right, and we've obviously just had this in spades in the last few months. We had Robin Williams back in August,
Right.
and then we had over the weekend that woman Brittany, who was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer and decided to end her life. It was incurable. And yet there's another story of a 19-year-old freshman in college who's also diagnosed with brain cancer, and she played in her first college game
Right.
over the weekend and scored 4 points, and that was huge news on the sports networks because her whole attitude is, I'm going to enjoy the last 6 months. I'm going to do what I'm going to do.
And look at Stephen Hawking,
Yeah.
a man who's 70-some years old, the only person that has this longevity with ALS. I mean, he was diagnosed in his early 20s, right? He's lived beyond, most ALS patients don't live for,
Right.
you know, beyond 2 years.
Well, and look at Valerie Harper.
Right.
She was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer about a year ago, and she's still around.
So where are we going with all of this? Because we're kind of all over the roadmap. Divine timing is a huge issue.
It is.
I think.
It is. Let me give another example. I think, let's look at the 1989 San Francisco earthquake during the World Series. And by the way, congratulations to my San Francisco Giants.
I knew you were going to put that in there somehow.
But
I can always tell it's Sunday. I know, timing-wise, it's Sunday
football.
because I'm watching
Watching my
football
Facebook.
statements from Jay McGuire on Facebook.
So,
yeah.
but at any rate, a lot of people in San Francisco at that time credit the World Series with the few amount of deaths that actually happened in that earthquake
because the game was on.
Because it happened right after 5 o'clock, and a lot of those people would have been on the Bay Bridge,
But
that
they
did
weren't.
Right, and they were in the game.
And that's the one that collapsed, right?
That's the one that
Yeah.
collapsed.
Yeah.
And they credit that game with saving thousands of lives. So I think that's divine timing.
Yeah. So is that spirit talking? I mean, we could do some more research on this and come back with another show on this because
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's really interesting. I really do believe that the more I can stay in the moment on anything that I'm doing, the better my life goes. From a
Right.
standpoint of I'm not worrying about the future, I'm not worrying about the past. this reality, you have to do some planning. You have to pay your bills on time. You know, or you don't have to. You
Right,
don't have to.
right. But it's recommended.
But it's recommended. You know, so there are things that make this reality a little smoother. But I think when it comes to our emotions and our spirit and how that interacts with the sequencing we were talking about, that's where the divine timing comes in.
Well, and it's because spirit, like you said, there's no time on the other side.
They don't care.
So they're just always in the now.
They are.
And there's
There is just now.
Yeah, there is now. And even Eckhart Tolle has some great quotes. Of course, I can't think of one off the top of my
No,
head.
of course not. No.
But he's got the book, The Power of Now.
Mhm.
And it's actually a very enlightening book as far as how you get out of that past and stay in the present. Because if you're in the past, you're in an area that you don't need to be in.
And if you believe, as some people do, that everything that's happening in the past is still happening now. I mean, there is no time.
The parallel universe.
The parallel universe. When you're feeding that argument, when you're feeding something that happened that you can't seem to let go of, you're not here.
Right.
You have
And I would say we send them to that website that you and I like, the Science of
Spirit Science.
Spirit Science.
Yeah.
Send them to that website. They have that actually website, Facebook page has some great
It's
articles.
really fascinating, and I wonder sometimes how what it's based on, you know. But it's because it's an opinion. You have to admit that the internet is full of opinion, more than it's
But
full
everything
of
on
fact.
it is true.
Of course it is. And I can refer you to people who think that's true.
I know.
You know. Jerry's sitting over here shaking her head. just
But
going,
then
where
you can
are
also,
you people going?
one thing I found out years ago is if you type into your browser the end of the internet, there's actually a page that clicks on it, says this is the end of the internet. It's a total joke.
Oh,
But
good
it's
grief.
hilarious. And then if you type in the middle of the internet, there's a page for that too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Divine timing is things happen when they're ready, and I know there have been things that I have tried to push when it wasn't time.
Yes, me
and
too.
I've worried about things that I in my framework they needed to happen now, and there's a time thing. I need to happen now, so I'll feel better. You know, I'm trying to control it, but that's divine timing as things happen when everything comes together. Sometimes things
Right.
get held up because something that's coming isn't quite there yet.
And you and I have experienced that recently. We've tried to get a couple of projects going and send some emails and voicemails to people that are interested in having us, either you doing a drum circle or me doing a meditation, and we just keep
It's
coming
not going
up.
anywhere.
It's not. And it's okay, because it's obviously not time yet.
So I think the danger there is that we use it as an excuse. We can use it as an excuse
yeah.
if we're not careful. But if I truly can find it calm and peace and go, I'm just going to sit back and it's not time. It's just not time. It's time for it to cook yet. It needs to cook some more. Then life seems to go a lot better.
Right, because again, we come back to what we talked about at the top of the hour, which is the cycles, the seasons.
Right.
You know, a woman gets pregnant, she doesn't give birth the next day. There's that 9-month cycle.
Right. And it doesn't come when the doctor says. I get a little concerned, I have to admit, these days when I keep hearing well, if it doesn't come today, then we're going to induce it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What's
Well,
going
both
on?
I had both my kids were induced.
Yeah, see,
But
no,
I also had medical reasons for that too.
Yeah, and you know, I'm not saying there's a right answer there. I'm just saying that I wonder about it because we seem to be more geared to time. One more time, we've got something that's more based in this reality, and we're not bringing spirit in on it, in the perspective to look at it.
Right, because back in the day, children were born when they were born. You know, and even nowadays, there's people that want to have their baby, you know, be the first baby of the new year or the last.
What is that all about? You know,
being the first, being
Yeah.
number one, being on top.
remember the Y2K thing?
Are you a January 1 baby? You're December
Oh, you're
31.
December 31. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a very interesting way to look at life. I have to say that my life's a lot more peaceful since I quit worrying about whether something's going to happen when I think it should.
I just know that I've been doing a lot of prayer and a lot of meditation this year, and I just feel peace all the time. Even if I'm trying to get upset, and there's been times when I have.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I'm not perfect. I'm Irish,
am.
but I'm not perfect.
No, I don't think so.
Well, or as they say, I'm Irish. I'm better than perfect.
Yeah.
But it's still, you know, even if I get upset, I can still feel that peace, which is an interesting.
Would you say that that's in the moment?
Yeah.
when you're at peace like that? I
Yeah.
think so.
Because I think it brings me, what it does is it brings me out of that anxiety. And it brings me out of that worry. And I'll tell you, with the move that I had this last week, there was definitely some anxious moments.
Oh yeah, I'll bet. I
You
heard it
know?
in your voice a couple times.
It
A couple
was-
times I talked to you.
Yeah, it was definitely, anxious and kind of.
And you didn't know how you were going to get stuff moved, and people stepped
Yeah.
up.
People did. I have to say, I have to give a shout out to Amanda Berry, my daughter's friend,
Uh-huh.
and her friend Greg, and they and a couple of other people that really did step up with trucks and muscle and all that. I also want to say to Amanda Berry, enjoy your time with your husband. He just got back from Turkey today. He's in
Oh,
the
good.
military,
Oh,
so he's
good.
back on Nevada soil, and I don't expect to hear from her, get a text or a phone call for
No,
her
I don't
for a
think
while.
so.
They've
I think we'll
been-
let her have that time.
Yeah, they've been apart for almost a year, and right after they got married, he got deployed.
Wow.
So he's back today, and she's all excited. And she told me, she called me mom, and she said, you're not going to hear from me for a few days. And I just said, totally understandable.
Yeah.
And speaking of veterans, next Tuesday, you and I are busy.
Are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next Tuesday is Veterans Day.
Yeah. So we're going to
Yeah.
have something about veterans here.
Right, absolutely. And I'm going to be heading out to the parade at 10 a.m.
Okay.
And Las Vegas actually has the biggest parade west of the Mississippi.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes, we have the biggest Veterans Day parade west of the Mississippi.
Right.
And after that, I'm going to head over to U.S. Vets and serve some food. I believe Cozy Meyer will be showing up as well.
Right. If I'm in town, there's a chance I may not be in town.
I understand that.
Right,
I
yeah,
understand that. And a couple of the guys at the Radcliffe House and at U.S. Vets have said they will call in
Oh,
to
that's
the
nice.
show.
We
and
can talk to them.
We can talk to them. And so next Tuesday is going to be devoted completely to veterans in our active military. So if you want to call up and wish somebody well or
Right.
tell us a story or anything, it's free for all if you want to do that. If you're here, I know you may
Right.
get a phone call
I
and
might
be
get
out
a phone
of
call
town.
and have to
Right.
be gone. Although
Right.
today things are better.
Right, since she got taken off the medication.
Again, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are listening that haven't clocked in, my mother's 96. She has dementia. She is very close to passing, and
Mhm.
she gets better, and then she looks like she's going, and she gets better, and then but she's stabilized now. So it's a
But she got better after she got taken off all non-essential
non-essential
medication.
medication. She got better.
And
yeah.
it's interesting. At 96, she's allowed to have dementia.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
have brief moments of it myself.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So yeah, we're gonna.
And
we're
that's
gonna
going
do
to
that.
be in divine timing, I think. Your mom.
Oh, it is, and I think everybody's passing is in divine timing. I
Mhm.
think that it doesn't make sense when you hear. I just heard today from a friend that's in town about a young man who passed away. It was the son of someone I went to school with, and was driving home one night. There was alcohol involved, unfortunately, but was driving home one night and gone. He's gone.
Yeah. Mhm.
So we were talking about that. But what is that all about? So is there anything? Is there such a thing as wrong divine timing? I don't think so.
I
I
don't
think
think
that's an
so.
oxymoron. I think that just doesn't go together.
And I think, though, that also we need to remind people to tell the people that you love.
Mhm.
Tell them. Because they could be here one moment and gone the next.
So for this week, if you want to practice divine timing, take a moment when you're rushing, and take a moment and just see, do I really need to be someplace right now? Take a
Mhm.
moment and sit back. If you have the luxury and you can do it, take a moment and sleep until you naturally wake up and notice how you feel. And not attached to and go to bed when you naturally feel like it. Listen to your body rhythm.
And I want to reiterate, next week is all about veterans.
It is all about veterans.
So,
Thanks for listening. I'm Alina Risto.
and I'm Jane McGuire, and like our Facebook page.
Soul Chat.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
We'll see you all next week. Bye.
Looking back at life as it's been before, holding on to things that might have been, knowing that this day will never come again, as my spirit's guiding me to a place where I am free to be all that I can be. Here I am in stories that I know, feeling safe yet yearning to go. Time dream.